What is up guys? So the preseason patch is finally here and I'm going to break it down with you and give you a head start. Now I want to cover a lot of things here and go into a lot of detail, and this patch is just really too big, so I'm going to split it into two videos, one today and one tomorrow. I'm going to go over champions and early game kills today, and then tomorrow I'm going to be going over the jungle items in general and jungle enchantments. These two videos will cover everything that's important, and I don't really want to make this like a 15-20 minute long video, so I thought splitting it down the middle in half will kind of put it down into bite-sized chunks for you. If you want to know about the objectives or elixirs, then I've already done videos for those as well, so there'll be links down below where you can click on the screen on the little thingies and they'll take you to those videos. So let's make a start then, shall we chaps? Now Azir is the first big champion change I guess, and they're buffing his Q damage and his E shield early, but they're nerfing his W late game. It's actually a good change for Azir. He's in a good spot anyway right now. He does a lot of damage, but he's just pretty hard to play, so it's not very noticeable. This shield change is the biggest one for him I think, because it means that you can duel people more early and you're more likely to come out on top. The Temu change is kind of keeping him in line with the new jungle. They're reducing his base armor and his damage on his W. It's not really too big a deal. They kind of had to change it, otherwise he would have been OP in the new jungle with the new items. I always max my E first for damage when I gank anyway, and his W is only affecting his clear speed, so he's still going to be just as strong. I know I joked about Fiora being rubbish before, but she has made an appearance in my top tier list for a little while, just saying she's kind of on the verge of being really strong, and this is nerfing her AoE damage but keeping her single target basically the same. So it doesn't really affect her laning, which is where I think her strength is. She's still a huge lane bully and can snowball really hard, but it does mean you're weaker when you come into team fights. Alright, so GNAR is probably the powerhouse of top lane right now, and a nerf is justified. It's been long overdue really. The boomerang and boulder toss damage is now going with the AD ratio rather than kind of the base damage. His W damage is going down in the early game and his E cooldown is going up. Now the W change is probably what hurts GNAR the most here. You used to be just able to boomerang someone then follow it up with 2 auto attacks for a huge amount of damage, but that's not going to hurt as much now. The other problem is that GNAR doesn't really want to build damage items. You just want to build tanky and absorb a ton of damage yourself. So KATARINA's ultimate is getting nerfed at rank 1 and 2, and it's going to go back to its old values at rank 3. It's kind of expected really, because KATARINA is coming back into the game more now, and her ultimate cooldown early was so low that she could just use it for harass rather than trying to kill someone. It's not going to be a huge nerf for her, but it means that you actually have to use it wisely now when you want to kill, rather than just kind of going for lane control or just like, well, why not? Why not just use it for damage? So these Kha'Zix changes are pretty small. They're just increasing the cooldown on his W. They're trying to get him to become more of an assassin rather than this kind of pokey champion, so you jump in and kill someone rather than just sit at the back and fire your W off all the time. I'd probably personally always evolve my E now first because it gives you the resets and the extra gank capability, but evolving your Q would also do a ton of damage with the new items. Now Rammus's Q cooldown is much higher at early levels, and his E armor shred has been reduced as well. The Q cooldown just means that you have to wait longer to gank, but his real strength is really how fast he can get to you before you can react. It's not as big a nerf as it seems, but he definitely can't fight people one-on-one as much because of the nerf to his E. So moving on to the supports and SONA, and they've slightly reduced her damage and healing. They've increased the mana cost of her healing, meaning that she can't just spam it now and kind of has to be a little more picky when she's actually going to use it. It's actually a bigger nerf too, because you combine that with how mana regen works now and it won't actually be as effective on her, and she can't just buy a chalice to spam it anyway. The other counterpart to bot lane healing I guess is Soraka, and she's also getting a couple of changes. They're increasing the cooldown of her E and increasing the cast range on her W. It's making her more of a healer than offensive, and the cast range is actually a kind of a nice buff, and she's still really frustrating to play against. She's never been that great in lane, but it's in team fights where she's ridiculously strong, and these changes don't really affect that. Now the final change is to WARWICK, and honestly there's not really much point going too much into this one. WARWICK is probably the strongest jungler in season 5 right now with the new items, and so they're just increasing the ult cooldown to try and balance it a little bit. The final thing to do with champions that I want to talk about today is that the early game kill gold has been reset. So early game kills are now worth the full amount again, and only assists are worth less. It basically rewards early game invading and aggression, so we'll see a lot more cheese now probably, and it's actually worth flashing away to not die if you get invaded, whereas before I always said don't flash, just die and save it for lane. Now you actually want to flash away. So that wraps up the first part of the changes in 420, and that's the champions and the kill rewards. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at the jungle items, jungle enchantments, and also just the general item changes. If you want to see about the objective and the elixir changes, then click the videos on your screen now, and I'll catch you next time.